Carter. But let's just start with big picture, a 500 month. I've kind of been accused of giving the Cubs an excuse of their own because I think the schedule matters. And when you play 26 and 27 days and there's no off days even in travel, 3 cities earlier in the month, just the last road trip, no off day. Like, I think that's impactful as much as anything. Am I being too easy on your team? Are you digging deeper and saying, oh, that 500 month is worrisome?
Definitely not worrisome. Look, like obviously we want to win every game, and we'd rather be well above 500 than well below it. But I mean, look, like you talk about those 16 teams. Like there was 2, each of those teams, the Indians then and the Cubs, both had sub 500 months over the course of those 2 seasons. So it's just a long season, and to look at just any 30 game chunk of it and say it's something to be excited about or something to be worried about, I think is just too myopic of a view. So. Even the 81 game look we have right now is probably not enough to come to any firm conclusions. But generally, obviously, we played really, really well. We're playing above expectations, and guys have put us in a really good place to make a fun run here. So from that perspective, we're really excited and just trying to take the old cliche one day at a time.
I think the most impressive thing you guys have done is kind of figured out this bullpen, and they can be fickle, they can be hard. It seems it could be really challenging to do sort of in season, but you guys have done that. And I guess I was just asked, like, how does that come together? Is it, stuff that you guys are doing? Is it the analytic department? Is it just on-field stuff with you, with the manager, with the pitching coach? I mean, how is it that you guys have formulated one of the most dominant, like, assured, things right now with the bullpen when you look at the way you've pitched over the last month or so?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I think generally, I've not found many things in this game that don't involve, everyone that touches a player or touches a decision around the player. So, we're talking about the success of a particular pitcher. It's typically because all of those different functions that you talked about, whether that's our analysts, whether that's our coaches, whether that's our baseball operations staff, are all operating, with some synergy, to use some buzzwords, but like it's real. We have to find the player, then we have to have a plan for the player, and then we have to implement that plan with the player. And if there's any breakdown in that chain, it just doesn't work. So, most of the time, the successes and the failures are due to all of us. So from that perspective, yes. And then 2, I think one thing we realized, 4 years ago when I was coming in here was, just we need to be more transactional and be more willing to make some really hard decisions on moving away from a player and kind of churning through the different options, especially in a bullpen. Now, to be transactional, you have to have a lot of conviction in your forecast of your players. You have to have a lot of conviction on how good you think players are going to be, and you have to realize that you're going to be wrong sometimes. But it's kind of like counting cards in a casino. Mm-hmm. If you do it over and over again, you're going to be right more often than you aren't. And you're also going to take some losses, but you're going to take some wins on the long term. And I think that's kind of what we've done over the last couple of years, and we've seen some success from it, and we'll keep on trying to get better.
Visiting with Carter Hawkins, GM of the Cubs. A couple of, let's call them like internet debates, callers that call into the radio station, and they're involved in the lineup. So I know it's more for Craig Counsell, but you guys are all involved in these kinds of things. People, Carter, are upset when there's a lefty on the mound that Dansby's batting 4th, even though Pete Armstrong's numbers against lefties aren't great. What is the calculus there? Is it really about the first inning, getting Dansby up against what he's traditionally better at, hitting lefties? Not so much this year, though. So that's like a big internet debate. People get all upset when Swanson bats 4th.
Yeah, I mean, when things don't go well, typically people get upset, and that's just kind of part of the deal. And our focus can't be on what's happened. Our focus has to be on what's going to happen and continuing to try to predict most effectively what's going to happen. We think Dansby's a really good player. We think his body of work against left-handed pitching, makes him have more likely to be a successful hitter moving forward against lefties. And so we put him in that place. The batting order, it's, we're solving for trying to score the most runs in that game, but there's a lot of other things too, right? Like we try to alternate righties and lefties. So you can't just have this pocket of lefties that a left-handed reliever can come in, or same thing with right-handers, where you have this pocket where a right-handed reliever can come in and mow down 3 guys in a row. So there's a little bit of everything that goes into it, but overall, we just trust in the player that Dansby is, and think that he'll be the version of his general version of himself overall moving forward.
The one thing I would guess push back on is, and Jed has said this over and over again. Let's not get too caught up in the lineup. Put your better hitters at the top, and that makes a lot of sense because of the extra at bat. And so here's my thought on PCA batting at least fourth: is that most bullpens are right-handed, most closers minus Josh Hader are right-handed, and do you not – I mean, look, it's a 51-49 decision maybe. Do you not want to leave PCA on deck? And I think that's happened a couple times in the 9th inning against a right-handed closer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly, like I said, there's things that happen in the past, right? And, sometimes it's a good decision, sometimes it's a bad decision. It's trying to make sure that more often than not going forward in the future, it's going to be a good decision. So, yes, there's going to be times where he's on deck, but there's also going to be times where he's up to bat early in the game with runners on and have the opportunity to knock them all in. So they're trying to weigh all those different things. But, kind of what Jed said, the order thing, overall over 162 games, it's on the magnitude of runs, not significant amount of wins.
Carter Hawkins is our guest on the Yingling Guest Hotline here on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN Chicago app. Do you anticipate any payroll limitations maybe that might impact a player you'd like to add or players you would like to add at the trade deadline in about a month?
And I think generally, we've had the resources we've needed to win, and, I don't expect that to change over the course of the next couple months either. And, those are constant conversations with ownership in terms of the opportunity cost of any particular player. But we feel really good about the resources we have to win, and, expect to feel good about that as we get closer to the deadline.
Can you update us on any conversations you guys have had with Kyle Tucker potentially signing long-term?
I cannot.
Damn.
Almost got me. You almost got me.
Kind of like an obligatory question at this point, right? So speaking of the deadline, I mean, it's July 1st, so plenty of time to go. I'm sure you're having as many draft meetings as trade meetings, but draft is not sexy, even though, draft talk isn't sexy, even though Cam Smith was a huge pick and turned into Kyle Tucker. So setting the draft meetings aside, just like on July 1st, you're not going to give us too many specifics, but were you on the phone with other executives today about trades? Is it a daily thing on July 1st, or is it become more daily later in the month?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely increases in intensity the closer you get to the end of the month. That's for sure. This time of year, you're looking at the broad landscape of players. Most teams don't even have a great feeling about the direction they're going to try to go. So it's a lot of just laying the groundwork, foundational type conversation. So yeah, I was on the phone with a couple guys over the course of today, but nothing specific as much as just, hey, what do you think you're going to do? What are the things we should be thinking about with you guys, and vice versa. And you just want to be prepared for when things do speed up, but it rarely speeds up this time of year, that's for sure.
You've got 6 teams in each league that are within 3 games of the wild card, with the added wild card. And, that doesn't obviously include the division leaders right now, like you guys. And then when you've added this wild card, I mean, it seems like it would make it, I don't know, maybe a little bit more nebulous this time of year when teams kind of feel like they could still potentially be in it. I mean, is that must change the calculus for you guys a little bit, or change it for the league over the years here since they've added the playoff teams, right?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think there's definitely less clear delineations between sellers and buyers. From Jed and my perspective, it's kind of fun. It really forces you to think creatively and try to make deals that potentially wouldn't fall clearly as a buy deal or clearly as a sell deal. You think about the Morel trade last year. That was a creative deal where we're getting a player that in Paredes that was going to help us, over a course of a couple of different years, but probably was more of a buy-type deal overall, even though we were kind of in more of a sell mode. And so it's a little bit more creativity that's allowed given that circumstance, and makes it fun for all of us.
When in the development of PCA did you guys realize he had this power profile, this power potential, and all this slug?
I mean, I think we always knew he could hit the ball really hard, and he definitely hit for power in the minor leagues. So it's not all that surprising that he's hitting home runs. Now, the rate that he's hitting home runs is definitely kind of a 95th percentile outcome for us in terms of what we could have expected. I think he might be the only one that would have expected that he would play like this. And, I think typically when you talk about great players like him, that they're the ones that kind of lead the way in terms of belief on the particular player. But, man, I couldn't pinpoint one particular moment. I mean, I remember that home run against the Astros last year. It kind of came out of nowhere when he was in a really big slump, and that was the catalyst, it feels like, to him really starting to put things together. And, I think I wouldn't say it's something that creeped on us, but, I mean, heck, around May of this year, we just, that Brewer series, maybe it was kind of like, oh, man, like, this has gone from something good to something special.
Amazing. Visiting with Carter Hawkins, GM of the Cubs. Couple trade-related questions. And really, I know in a lot of ways it has to happen internally. Like if you make a trade, it's for one pitcher or for one hitter, but the guys on your team have to perform. But there's two areas. Like starters ERA is 4.30. That ranks 23rd, Carter. The other thing is you guys are 11-13 when a left-handed starter, opposes you, which I think is probably a surprise in some ways. I think you thought you'd be better against left-handed pitching. Are those two areas where you think you can improve via the trade deadline? Improving that starting rotation, improving your luck against left-handed pitching?
Yeah, I mean, look, like you kind of hit it early, but, we're just looking to make the team better, right? So that can be in any particular way, depending on the cost of making the team better. And it could be offense, it could be defense, it could be base running, et cetera. I think, when you talk about places that are more obvious where we can improve, definitely, we got to figure out, like you said, the starting rotation to where, we're not, towards the back end of the league, that, we're able to improve there. So, I would think that would be a spot that, it's likely that we could find upgrades in. We will obviously be very robust in the search for that. In terms of the left-handed hitting, I mean, I think we're fifth in the league against left-handed pitching overall.
Sixth in OPS, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a strength of ours, honestly. And, look, like, we face some really good left-handed starting pitchers, your Skubals, your Valdez's. So I think from that perspective, the 11-13 or whatever that stat was you said, I think that's a little bit misleading. Feel really good about our lineup. If we can improve, of course we will, but that's not an area that we're staring at and going, oh, man, that's a big weakness for us.
Oh, that's interesting because I wasn't sure if the 6th in OPS was misleading or the 11-13. You know what I mean? Like, do you achieve the 6th ranking because of lefty relievers that were C relievers on other teams? But no, I'm buying what you're selling. The one guy that I think everyone thought would hit a little bit more was Justin Turner, and he hasn't as much. I didn't realize, Carter, he was pretty much an everyday player through last year. For some reason, I just had in my head that he was kind of a part-time player last year, and he put up a 350 or 360 on base. Has adjusting to being a part-time player, even as smart as he is, has that impacted him, or is it just obviously a 40-year-old guy, or where do you see with Justin Turner? Because I know he could be key against left-handed pitching.
Yeah, I mean, look, he has an unbelievably professional approach, an unbelievable professional at bat. He's situationally very, very good. I don't think he's necessarily hitting the ball as hard this year as he has in the past, and that's something that he's working on and trying to get his contact point out in front a little bit more effectively. And he is working diligently on those things. I don't think that the fact that he's not playing every day has affected him significantly, other than probably don't get the reps to work through adjustments like you would otherwise. But no, he's a guy that's been a big part of this team, and we'll continue to try to help him get better so that he can help impact us down the stretch here.
One more question about the trade deadline. It's kind of fascinating now that you can't make moves in August or September. So I'm curious, are there two different calculations you make in terms of deals that help you get to October, but also deals that help you in October, if that makes sense? And I'm thinking about both. There are. Okay, because you think about 16 with Hector Rondon, as good as he was, they traded for Aroldis Chapman. Like, as good as Palencia is, I mean, is it a luxury if I said, boy, it'd be nice to trade for another reliever that could get you saves in October? But Palencia would probably get you to October, So is it two different calculations?
Yeah, it's a really fun conversation, and we could nerd out on this for a long time, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, so you talk about like the marginal value of a win. You might have heard me say that at some point, and that's just how valuable any additional win is during your season towards whatever goal you're looking for. And relievers, for instance, aren't super impactful over the course of 162 games relative to a starting pitcher or relative to a position player. But because of the way you could use a roster in the playoffs, because of the off days, because of just the fact that you can just blow guys out during the playoffs, relievers become more valuable because the leverage of their innings increases. And so that's a particular player that is valued differently depending on what you are solving for. So going back to the 16 series, right, Chapman was a very, very valuable piece because of the leverage of innings that he was able to throw, as we saw in the World Series, not necessarily Game 7, but the ones before that.
Yeah.
So, it's really, there's always that conversation of what are you really solving for? And counterintuitively, the best way to put yourself in position to win a World Series isn't necessarily punching a ticket to the playoffs year over year over year. It's building elite teams. So when you're talking about trying to win a World Series, it's not about just getting your foot in the door. It's about trying to build that, the best optimal roster for the playoffs that you possibly can. And, I think different teams have different goals as it relates to that at different points in their win curves. And, certainly a conversation that we have. And, I think that was a long answer to your short question. The short answer is, yep, absolutely. It's a conversation that happens here.
There's a lot of nuance in those conversations for sure, and in those decisions that you guys have to make.
And I mentioned on the air yesterday, Carter, I don't think people realize this. Hector Rondon had 18 saves and a 1.95 ERA when Theo and Jed traded for Aroldis Chapman. So that was like a all-in moment, wasn't it? Like, I'm sure the league kind of thought it that way as well.
Yeah, and similarly on the other side with Cleveland, right? We traded for Andrew Miller and utilized him in some really high leverage situations. I think he ran out of gas a little bit towards the end there in the World Series, but that impact of a reliever in the playoffs is disproportionate to the impact in the regular season, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, for sure. Carter, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us today. Good luck in the second half.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
There's Carter Hawkins, the GM of the Cubs, on the Yuengling guest hotline.